Welcome back. You're watching Stock Picks. For today's segment, we unpack Apple, Amgen and Spotify with Vestact's Bright Khumalo. Bright, always a pleasure and a good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
All right, brilliant. Maybe we'll start off with Amgen. We always say that if it's not AI, it's going to be a weight loss. All of it is big money. Talk to us about why you like Amgen today.
I actually like the fact that you came to me and we started with Amgen, which needs a little bit more attention span. So it's good to start with Amgen. For those who don't know, Amgen is basically a biotechnology company that focuses mainly in oncology drugs, which are cancer drugs. And obviously there's heart disease there. You did mention weight loss and diabetes, part of that. And obviously, growing sectors in their portfolio is immunology. I'm forgetting some things because they're a very big company with over 300 billion, in market cap. And obviously, you're bound to forget something. But for those who don't know Amgen and their come up, they actually started many moons ago making a very popular drug now for cancer called Epogen. So if you know Epogen or EPO in endurance sports, it's the sports that put Lance Armstrong on the map and off the map, because he lied. He said he had, cancer of the nether regions, and, all of a sudden it was amazing at climbing at, 400 watts and up to Wes, by himself and winning the Tour de France while he was actually taking this a drug that basically increased your red blood cell count, which makes sense because if you have cancer and you're going through chemotherapy, obviously most of your blood cells also get blasted away through the process. So if you have this therapy called Epogen, which it's basically, there's a new version of it now. It's no longer called Epogen, but Epogen is still out there in the market. It helps increases your red blood cells, which are the blood cells very important in transporting oxygen in your blood. So you can see why that would be an advantage for someone who wants to cheat the system like Lance Armstrong. But we digress here, but that's the drug that put them on the map. And since then, they've developed many drugs in their pipeline. But the one, obviously, that we here today to talk about, or the ones, that putting a lot of interest into the company's Maritide, which is going to be their competing drugs for Wegovy and the other drug that's made by Eli Lilly, and obviously the Scandinavian company that I'm forgetting now.
Novo Nordisk.
Novo Nordisk, yes, there you go, yes.
100%, 100%. Now, I must ask you about, this sector here. It does, and I'm wondering, just from a competition perspective, right, we do speak of Novo Nordisk. We know what's happening with Wegovy. We know what's happening with Ozempic and even Eli Lilly here. When we bring Amgen to the fore, is there enough room? Is there a big enough market for all of these players to play well? And also, people who can afford these drugs, because they're also very, very expensive, do they not go in first? And then the easy money is kind of made with Ozempic and Wegovy.
If you know or just listen to a podcast about the process of actually being able to make these drugs at scale, it's very intricate and complicated and very tough, which creates lots of barriers to entry, which is one of the reasons why it took Amgen so long to actually eventually get to a point where the FDA is almost at the leg of approving their Maritide drug, is because, it's you can't wake up overnight with no cash like you can in tech and start competing with people with money in the sector. Biotechnology, has got good barriers to entry, so making it decent for an investment once as a quote-unquote blockbuster drugs, as they call it in the sector. So yes, when it comes to competition, I think there's enough room for three. Recently, we've seen Eli Lilly, building facilities in different places in the US where these drugs are going to be distributed. We've seen Novo Nordisk do the same in London and in the UK in general, to be able to distribute to the European market. And obviously, there's so much demand, especially on the recreational side, not on the diabetes side, for these drugs, that they can't fulfill those orders currently. So most of these orders go, to their respective diabetes side of things, where, over 50,000 injections are actually issued out, or prescriptions are issued out per month by each company, and that market is expected to grow to over 130 billion US dollars by end of 2030. So I think 130 billion is good enough, even if you get 10 or 20 billion of that market for three players in the space. Hence why when Amgen came out with these news, the share price had its largest one-day gain since the year 2009. So it tells you what they think about this drug. What's interesting about this drug is that Meritide is going to be 14.5% more effective than its counterparts when it comes to weight loss. So 14.5% is, it sounds like little, but if you put it on a scale side by side, it's a lot of weight to lose. And obviously, once you start using the drug, we've spoken about this in the past, that there's no off-ramp there. It's going to be very hard to find an off-ramp where you still keep your nice and lean body without taking the drug. So there's that. But yeah, and obviously there are ethical issues when it comes to, well, if this is a drug for people who have diabetes, shouldn't we prioritize them first? Why are we commercializing the drug and only caring about the weight loss and not what it's intended to do? But I mean, why not do both? That's always been my thing. If the market for diabetes is 20 billion, well, let's do the rest and capture the whole 130.
With that said, before we move on from a valuations perspective, how's it faring compared to its competitors?
It's ultra cheap as compared to competition. I think in 8 years, it's up 82%. Only in the last year, it's up 32%, meaning most of the gains have been made in the last year. Even year to date, it's only up 3.4%. They still got a long way to go. Whereas if you compare it to Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk, those are much higher in comparison on a 1 year, year to date, or even a 5-year, period when you compare the three companies. So there's more value, to be enjoyed from investing in Amgen at this point. I mean, at this point, it's still paying a 3% dividend yield, where its competition both are paying 1%. So come on, guys.
Moving on now, I want to speak about Apple. It has been a very colorful period for Apple there, and I'm keen just to get your thoughts actually on why you like this counter right now, Bright, because, if you just Google Apple, all you can read about is all the issues it's having in China there, but of course, you like it, so tell us why.
Yeah, no, I like bad news where a company takes the share price in the wrong direction, and obviously people with paper hands run the wrong direction, so that's good for us who are looking for value in these markets. I mean, this morning, a friend of mine was sending me articles saying that, well, what do you know when Warren Buffett is selling his stake and you're trying to tell us to buy Apple? What do you know that Warren Buffett doesn't know? I'm like, first of all, I have an advantage against Warren Buffett because, I don't know, I'm in my 30s. He's in his, swan years. So he's got one leg on the banana peel and the other leg on the, his grave. So I don't have that problem. So I can take a much longer investment horizon than he can right now. But maybe there's other issues, like, for example, he's overexposed to Apple, where, two companies, Apple, I think, and Microsoft, both those companies for him are over 60% of his portfolio. So, of course, he would be wanting to shave some of that down and use the cash to invest elsewhere. But again, we digress. Apple is a good company. It's still the old, trusty, iconic brand with high-quality products that are cheap to make but are sold at a very high margin. So much so that, they own about 90% of the profits in the whole, devices market, which is insane, especially the iPhone. The margins on the iPhone are crazy, meaning most of these devices for companies like Google, Microsoft, and all these other companies that sell phones, the devices are usually a loss leader, and obviously the software and the bundles that come with it, that's where they make the profits. Whereas for Apple, everything is profitable. So why wouldn't I like that company? And another reason why I like Apple is, its income streams are well diversified. Like I said, it's hardware sales, it's services like Apple Music and iCloud, it's accessories. I mean, if you look at their most recent collabs, for example, Hermes, you buy a strap for a price that costs more than your laptop. It's pretty insane. I like those margins though, because those people like the brand, they're gonna buy that. So that's the type of company we're dealing with here. And lastly, what I need to mention is everyone always forgets that Apple is very cash generative with a very strong balance sheet, with cash reserves from here to the moon and back. I mean, north of 120 billion US dollars in cash, little to no debt, and strong buyback program. On their latest results, the stock surged about 6% on the news. So, I mean, I don't know, listen to what the market is telling you. Don't listen to the stories that people write.
And
so there's value in Apple, and that's what I think.
Then I must ask you, Bright, they've announced that buyback. It's going to be the biggest buyback, I think, ever. When I read, it's literally the biggest
ever in any company on earth.
Exactly. So I must ask you, is this a time to also jump in? If you want to, again, make some money from that share buyback, if you want to be part of that, a value release that they'll be having there.
Unlock.
Yeah.
Look, usually when they announce these things, you see, if it wasn't priced in the share price, you see the share price go up, like we saw on these latest numbers for Apple. But I mean, if you're a long-term investor, I think there's more upside than downside on buying something like an Apple. Like I said, it's an iconic brand, it's trusty, it's boring, hence why everyone has only negative things to say, because they can't see the obvious that's right staring in their faces.
Let's move on now to talk about Spotify. Very interesting one. They've also recently announced record profits of, billions of dollars there. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this counter.
So this one I've been picking over time, over the years, and obviously you would know I'm a big fan. I mean, they're very dominant when it comes to streaming, not just in music alone, but they expanded to podcasts. They spent north of $2 billion during COVID, just expanding into their podcast. Now you logged in. All your favorite podcasts are there on Spotify exclusively. And then, you have to pay for that subscription membership to get all of these and exposure to these things. And I've learned most of the things I know from listening to good podcasts that are educational. So I hope my content as well comes across that way, because I learned from the best. Thank you, Spotify. The company just was never really profitable. I think it had one quarter that was profitable, was in 2022, and that was about it. But now it's going to be a little bit more consistent, and this is what shareholders wanted to see. I mean, in terms of scaling, the number of subscribers is already there. The ad business is also now coming to the fore, making profits for the company. International growth opportunities, there's quite a lot of that happening. They're already big in North America and Europe, but there's still ample room for growth for, Africa, Southeast Asia. And let me tell you, once they have you, and once that algorithm starts learning your taste, it's like your mother is giving you your music and your podcast, from a silver platter every single morning. It's beautiful to watch.
I must actually ask you about the podcast model, because, Brian, in my mind, I just can't see how it works. And when I was reading about Spotify, actually, it was a huge contributor to this record profits that we're making mention of here. It really is a model that seems to be working. Maybe it's because I'm South African, and from a South African perspective, it's still hard to understand how podcasts generate the kind of revenues that we are speaking about here at Spotify.
I mean, so ad revenue is not a new concept. You can go back to newspaper days. You put buy a block, and they'll charge you an amount for that. It's the exact same thing now with podcasts. Instead of being a block, it's now verbal. They pre-record the thing, and obviously they'll say the ad. Obviously, if you want the ad to be really expensive, it'll be just after the intro of the podcast. You'll be somewhere in the middle. If you want to pay cheaper, you're going to be the guy who posts the ad towards the outro. But that's not the only thing where you listen to ads on podcasts. In the app itself, if you're not paying for premium, you get lots of ads. So these ads have become so annoying that if you don't have premium, you're going to be listening to a lot of ads. Some people are very patient. I'm not one of them. So I have the premium membership. So that also sort of kind of converts existing members into premium members, because you get so tired of hearing ads that you say, I've been working for 3 years now out of university. I'm tired of listening to these ads. And I mean, 90 rands or 60 rands or 40 rands, whatever they're offering you, because sometimes they see that you've been on the system for so long, they give you a discount in their usual fee. They say the first year is X amount, so you take that. It's like, this is a good deal for me. I'm taking it. I'm tired of listening to ads. So the ad model really works. And if you want to study it very, very closely, you should watch Meta Platforms, which is the largest ad generating machine of all time. And then obviously the second best one is TikTok, which came out of nowhere. And then the third one would be Google. So all of those businesses are just on ads alone.
Now, Bright, I want to get into our educational segment because it's one that excites me a lot. Let's talk about your educational segment this afternoon and why you want us to look into this term.
So the term of the day for me is DINK, which means dual income, no job. It means basically a couple that, we both work, we're a couple, and we have no kids. So we've got all of this disposable income to attack whatever comes our way. So that's my advice. If you're looking into going into a new relationship, make sure they got bags, yeah? Never go for a scrub, I'm sorry. But the reason why I like the term itself, DINK, because for those who don't know, come from the word, it's the opposite of a ninja, which is someone with no income, no job.
Okay.
So leave ninjas alone, go for dinks, go for dinks. That's what you're trying to do here.
Thank you, Bright. It's an absolute pleasure having you on Stock Picks this afternoon. Thank you. That was Bright Khumalo from Vestact.